Solo Leveling Season 2 has officially come to an end. If that cliffhanger ending left you craving more, you're in for a wild ride. So buckle up, because today we're diving straight into the next chapter of Hunter Sung Jin-Woo's unstoppable rise. After clearing the first wave of magical beasts in the Red Gate, Jin-Woo pressed forward with his summoned soldiers, advancing toward the next target. Then, the dungeon boss emerged. Flanked by his elite guards, he scanned the battlefield, searching for the one responsible for the massacre of his forces. His gaze locked onto Jin-Woo, an overwhelming presence that sent a ripple of unease through him. But before he could even issue a command, a chilling realization set in. The battlefield was silent. His entire army, all of them, had already been wiped out. Jin-Woo found the situation amusing. He commanded his shadow soldiers to reveal themselves, then, with a cold gaze, ordered them to eliminate the enemies standing before him. Jin-Woo, along with his shadow army, marched forward, exuding an overwhelming aura that was impossible to ignore. Sensing the imminent threat, the magic beasts charged with ferocity, but they were no match. The battlefield descended into chaos as Jin-Woo's forces brutally tore through their enemies, dismantling them piece by piece. The boss, now paralyzed with fear, could do nothing but watch as his forces were annihilated. His agonized screams echoed through the dungeon as he called out for his fallen subordinates, but none remained. In a final desperate attempt, the boss lunged forward, but Beru, moving at lightning speed, struck first. His claws pierced through the boss's body. Igris followed up, severing an arm in one swift motion. Tusk delivered the finishing blow, slamming the boss into the ground with overwhelming force. The entire battlefield trembled from the impact. As the dust settled, Jin-Woo stepped forward. The boss lay in a pool of his own blood, barely clinging to life. Jin-Woo demanded answers, but the creature remained silent. The system was likely interfering again, preventing it from revealing any crucial information. With a sigh, Jin-Woo dismissed the thought. For now, he had something else to focus on. He opened his inventory and, with a focused expression, took out a key. It was the cursed random box key, a rare item he had obtained after defeating Baran in the Demon Castle. At the time, the key had offered no information, leaving Jin-Woo puzzled about its purpose. But now, after reaching level 100 following his achievements in the Jeju Island raid, the required conditions had been met. The system had finally revealed the details behind the mysterious key. It was the key to the Kartanon Temple's gate. A message popped up, stating that the location of the designated gate would be revealed once the allotted time had passed. The name struck a chord in Jin-Woo's mind: Kartanon Temple. A rush of memories flooded in. The double dungeon, the ancient temple at its end, the eerie stone statues, and the stone slate held by one of them. The pieces were finally falling into place. Jin-Woo realized that the system was calling him back to where it all began. The very place that had set him on the path of a reawakened hunter was summoning him once more. But this time, it felt different. If everything had been orchestrated from the start, if the system had been waiting for his return, then Jin-Woo knew he had to answer the call. The challenge had been issued once again, and this time, he was ready. With steely resolve, Jin-Woo declared in his mind for the statue of God to wait for him, because he was coming. As Jin-Woo stepped out of the Red Gate after clearing it, daylight had already broken. He began walking toward his car, ready to head to his guild office, when a man suddenly approached him, introducing himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters. The man's presence hinted at something important. Curious, Jin-Woo asked why he had come all the way from the United States to meet him. Adam responded with something that immediately piqued his interest. He had information that no other country or institution could provide. Adam explained that the Bureau made it their mission to share knowledge with special individuals like Jin-Woo, and after his performance on Jeju Island, their interest in him had skyrocketed. But Jin-Woo, skeptical, was ready to walk away, until Adam said one word: upgrader. That stopped him in his tracks. Adam offered to explain further, and the two drove off to meet the Bureau's deputy director. Upon arriving, Jin-Woo was greeted by Michael Connor, the deputy director himself, who wasted no time getting to the point. He extended an offer, an invitation to join the American hunters. Jin-Woo, uninterested in their proposal, cut straight to the real reason he was there: the upgrader. Soon, a middle-aged woman named Norma Selner entered the room. Connor introduced her as the upgrader, the only person in the world capable of enhancing an awakened being's abilities. Miss Selner explained her powers, though Jin-Woo remained skeptical. When he questioned the effectiveness of her ability, she claimed that an individual could experience a 20 to 30% increase in strength after completing all 3 stages. Connor emphasized that the Bureau was willing to grant Jin-Woo this incredible gift, hoping he would accept. To prove her abilities, Miss Selner offered to perform the first stage right there. She gently took Jin-Woo's wrist, instructing him to look into her eyes. Connor, watching closely, was certain that once Jin-Woo experienced the upgrade firsthand, he would be eager to continue and sign the agreement. But what happened next left everyone in shock. As Miss Selner gazed into Jin-Woo's eyes, she suddenly found herself consumed by an overwhelming darkness. She searched frantically, but saw nothing until a shadow emerged. It moved closer, revealing its terrifying presence as it opened its eyes and stared directly at her. Overwhelmed by fear, she screamed and fell off her chair, completely shaken by what she had seen. The 2 agents guarding Miss Selner instantly drew their guns, aiming at Jin-Woo in a panic. Connor, alarmed by their reaction, quickly intervened, shouting for them to lower their weapons. He reminded them of who Jin-Woo was, warning that if they had acted this way towards someone like Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang, they wouldn't have lived to regret it. Realizing their mistake, the agents swiftly holstered their guns and rushed to assist the trembling Miss Selner. Connor turned back and bowed deeply to Jin-Woo, apologizing profusely for his agent's actions. Still trying to process what had just happened, Jin-Woo reassured him that it was okay. Connor rushed to Miss Selner's side, trying to understand what had happened. She could barely speak, her breathing unsteady. Seeing her distress, he quickly decided it would be best to reschedule their meeting with Jin-Woo. Without hesitation, Adam escorted Jin-Woo out of the room. Still struggling to catch her breath, Miss Selner finally managed to speak. To her, Jin-Woo was no ordinary hunter. He was a king, a powerful king beyond anything she had ever encountered. Connor, trying to grasp the magnitude of her words, asked if this meant Jin-Woo was as strong as a national-level hunter, but Miss Selner admitted that this wasn't something she could measure. What she had experienced went far beyond rankings or classifications. Still trembling, she described the sensation that had shaken her to her core. When she looked at Jin-Woo, it wasn't just him she saw, but a presence within him, a force so deep and overwhelming that it had looked into her as she tried to peer into him. As fear gripped her, she shared one last chilling realization with Connor. There was no limit to Jin-Woo's power. As Jin-Woo left the room, the atmosphere remained tense. The Bureau had sought to recruit him, believing they could offer him something valuable. Instead, they had just uncovered something far beyond their understanding. The story then shifted to an earlier event in the timeline. The scene cut to America, where a hunter was trapped in a high-level dungeon. Fear gripped his face as a chilling presence emerged before him, Silid, the Frost Monarch who was on the hunt for the rulers within the country. A moment later, a gate opened behind him, revealing Yogumund, the Transfiguration Monarch. He hurried toward Silid, bringing urgent news about a small island to the east. Silid frowned, questioning why Yogumund was bringing up a place he had already claimed, as the island in the east was home to the Shadow Monarch. Yogumund explained that the rulers were attempting to free Legia, south of that location, and he needed to head there immediately. He urged the Frost Monarch to take his place in the east. But Silid pressed again. What about the Shadow Monarch? Yogumund reassured him that as long as the architect fulfilled the contract, everything would go according to plan. However, He also shared an intriguing detail that made Scylla grin with excitement. The greatest fragment of light had been located in the east. Just then, the Frost Monarch sensed a powerful presence. A ruler had arrived. It was Sung Il-hwan, Jin-Woo's father. He had deliberately left traces of his power, luring the monarchs to America. His glare was filled with fury as he demanded to know if they were referring to Korea as the small island to the east. As they prepared to leave, the Frost Monarch confirmed it, taunting Il-hwan to chase them if he dared. Not one to back down, Il-hwan launched a swift attack, but Scylla countered effortlessly, erecting a massive ice wall that exploded upon impact, shaking the entire area. Back in the present, Yu Jinho sat in the office, fully committed to his new mission, silencing anyone who dared to badmouth Jin-Woo. After the Jeju Island raid and the controversy surrounding Jin-Woo's involvement, he was determined to protect both his partner and their guild's reputation. Wasting no time, he meticulously went through each offending comment, reporting them one by one with unwavering focus. Just then, Jin-Woo appeared silently beside him. The sudden presence startled Jinho, snapping him out of his concentration. Jin-Woo casually asked if there was any trouble, but Jinho assured him everything was fine. That's when he noticed something unusual. Jin-Woo was still in his hunter gear. Jin-Woo explained that he had just returned from a gate, bringing back high-level magic cores to fund their guild. Hearing this, Jinho was both relieved and impressed. With such valuable resources, they wouldn't have to worry about salaries for future employees. Jin-Woo, however, looked confused when Jinho mentioned employees. Jinho reminded him that they still needed one more member to officially establish the guild. But before they could dwell on it, another pressing issue came up: the guild's name. Jin-Woo initially dismissed it as unimportant, but Jinho emphasized that a name would define their identity. As they debated potential names, a knock at the door interrupted their discussion. Jinho hesitated, curious about who could be visiting. As he creaked the door open, he froze in shock. Standing before him was Hunter Cha Hae-in. Jin-Woo was just as surprised. Someone of her stature showing up at his office was completely unexpected. He asked what brought her there, and Hae-in, without hesitation, stated her reason. She wanted to join his guild. Jin-Woo, puzzled by her request, sought clarification. It had only been 2 years since her awakening, which meant she was still under contract with the Hunters Guild. He assumed she wouldn't be able to leave so easily, but to his surprise, Hae-in was willing to pay the penalty to break her contract. What shocked him even more was that she expected nothing in return, not even a signing bonus or a salary. Jin-Woo couldn't understand why she would abandon one of Korea's most powerful guilds for his newly formed, unproven one. Pressing further, he asked why she was making such a drastic decision. Hae-in hesitated. She lowered her gaze, struggling to put her feelings into words. She couldn't possibly admit the truth. After what happened in Jeju and how he saved her from the jaws of death, she wanted to be near him. But she couldn't say that. Instead, she composed herself and gave a made-up excuse. She simply wanted a simpler life. Jin-Woo listened, understanding more than he let on. As an S-rank hunter himself, he knew the burden that came with it. But he wasn't about to let her join just like that. To test her resolve, Jin-Woo introduced a guild entrance test. Hae-in was caught off guard, as there was no mention of a test in the recruitment notice. However, Jin-Woo smoothly deflected, implying it must have been an oversight on Jinho's part. For the test, Jin-Woo announced that she would have to face one of his summons, his strongest one. Yet, despite the unexpected challenge, Hae-in didn't even flinch. There was no fear, no hesitation. She was ready to take it on. Without wasting any time, Jin-Woo suggested heading to the Hunter Association's gymnasium to conduct the test. As they prepared to leave, Jin-Woo realized that the gymnasium was quite far from their office. He wanted to test if his shadow exchange skill could transport both of them together. He reassured Hae-in that there was no need for a long walk. They could take a shortcut. but she needed to stay close. As Jin-Woo stepped toward her, Hae-in felt a lump in her throat. He was closer than she expected. Before she could process it, Jin-Woo activated Shadow Exchange. In an instant, their forms sank into the shadows, vanishing from the room without a sound. As they arrived at the gymnasium, the lights flickered on automatically, reacting to their mana. The vast space was brightly illuminated, and Hae-in couldn't hide her amazement at what she had just experienced. She took a moment to take in her surroundings before her gaze finally settled on Jin-Woo, who was already prepared to begin the test. Just as they were about to start, Hae-in realized she had left her weapon behind. Jin-Woo pointed out that the gymnasium had reserve weapons, though they were mostly for training and not of the highest quality. Without hesitation, she examined the selection and chose a sword similar in weight and length to her usual one. Once she confirmed her choice, Jin-Woo summoned Igris, the best swordsman among his shadow soldiers. While Beru was undoubtedly his strongest summon, Jin-Woo knew unleashing him against Hae-in might be too much, potentially even traumatizing, so he settled on Igris for this test. Jin-Woo explained the conditions. Victory would be achieved by destroying the summon, while defeat would occur if Hae-in surrendered. To make the fight fair, he retrieved the Demon Monarch's sword from his inventory and handed it to Igris. Without wasting any time, Jin-Woo gave the signal, and the match began. Igris struck first, swinging the Demon Monarch's sword with deadly precision. A bolt of lightning shot toward Hae-in, crackling with immense power. She reacted instantly, dodging with cat-like agility as the blast struck the wall behind her, leaving a deep, charred mark. Jin-Woo watched closely, impressed. A lesser hunter would have been fatally wounded if they had been even slightly grazed by that attack. Without losing momentum, Hae-in gripped her sword and charged forward. Her focus was unwavering, and Igris met her head-on. Their blades clashed, sending sparks flying, each strike resonating through the gymnasium. Jin-Woo had expected a good fight, but as he observed the battle, he realized he had underestimated Hae-in. Despite wielding the Demon Monarch's sword, Igris was struggling. Hae-in's attacks were relentless, her technique refined and precise. With one final blow, she sent Igris crashing into the wall. The impact reverberated through the space, and Jin-Woo knew the outcome was decided. Before Igris could rise again, he called off the match. But Hae-in wasn't satisfied. She stepped forward, her breathing steady, and questioned whether Igris was truly the strongest summon Jin-Woo had. Her gaze was unwavering as she insisted on facing his strongest one now. Jin-Woo hesitated, knowing exactly who she meant. He was concerned she might get hurt, but Hae-in's determination was absolute. She wasn't backing down. She wanted this fight. After a brief pause, Jin-Woo finally agreed and, without saying another word, summoned Beru. The moment the shadow ant materialized, the atmosphere in the gymnasium shifted. But despite the crushing weight of his aura, Hae-in stood firm. Beru, ever loyal to Jin-Woo, awaited confirmation of his orders. Jin-Woo commanded him to defeat Hae-in, but made one thing clear: she must not be harmed. With his mission set, Beru unleashed a thunderous battle cry that shook the gymnasium. His blade-like claws extended menacingly from his fingers, ready to strike. Just as the tension peaked, Jin-Woo's stern voice cut through the silence, reminding Beru of his command. Hearing his liege's instruction, Beru immediately retracted his claws. In that instant, Hae-in saw an opening and moved to seize the moment, but before she could react, Beru vanished from her sight. An icy shiver ran down her spine. She had seen this move before, on Jeju Island. She steeled herself, refusing to fall for the same trick twice. Beru reappeared behind her, his presence looming over her, but this time, she was ready. Her blade lashed out in a flurry of precise strikes. Dozens of slashes cut through the air, yet not a single one landed. Beru dodged effortlessly, his form unmoving, his gaze impassive. The overwhelming difference in their power became painfully clear. No matter how fast or how precise her attacks were, they simply couldn't reach him. Confusion and frustration began to set in for Heian. She couldn't understand, how could he be so powerful? And more importantly, what kind of strength did Jin-Woo possess to command a monster like this with such ease? As doubt settled in, Beru suddenly closed the distance between them. A suffocating stench of death washed over her, paralyzing her limbs. For a fleeting moment, she felt as if it was over, but instead of attacking, Beru released a terrifying roar. The force of his magic power sent Heian skidding backward, momentarily stunned. Jin-Woo watched the one-sided fight unfold with a grimace. He found no pleasure in the spectacle and asked if Heian was satisfied, hoping she would yield. But despite everything, her resolve hadn't wavered. She still wanted to fight. Jin-Woo observed closely, trying to understand her intentions. By now, she knew she couldn't win. She had seen the sheer gap in their strength, yet she still refused to back down. He could sense Beru's growing irritation. Unlike his other summons, Beru was still a predator at heart. Even now, Jin-Woo could feel him suppressing his overwhelming instinct to kill. Suddenly, Beru's patience snapped. His instincts flared, and he could no longer tolerate prey standing up to its predator. With a flick of his wrist, his claws extended once more as he lunged at Heian with lethal intent. But she dodged, barely. Realizing she had to take a risk, Heian activated her most powerful technique, sword dance. Moving with increasing speed, her blade carved elegant arcs in the air, each strike flowing seamlessly into the next. The sound of metal clashing filled the room as Beru blocked every attack with his claws. Despite his calm demeanor, his displeasure was evident. Growing tired of the game, Beru decided to end it. As Heian lunged for another strike, he caught her sword with his bare hand. With a sickening crunch, he shattered it. Half the blade fell to the floor. But Heian didn't hesitate. She channeled all her remaining magic power into the broken weapon, its jagged edge glowing with an intense light. She was about to unleash a skill she had never used before, Blade of Light. Seeing her chance, Heian thrust her glowing weapon toward Beru, who had briefly lowered his guard after breaking her sword. Watching from the sidelines, Jin-Woo's eyes widened. Something was wrong. In that brief moment, Beru's mind reset. Jin-Woo's command to avoid harming Heian was overwritten, and an old, deeply ingrained instinct from his previous life resurfaced: annihilate all enemies. To Beru, Heian was no longer an opponent. She was prey. Claws outstretched, Beru launched himself at Heian with terrifying speed, intent on ending her. She froze, her instincts screaming at her, but it was too late to react. Just as his claws were about to reach her, Jin-Woo intervened. In a blur, he caught Beru's attack with his bare hands. Beru trembled as his gaze met Jin-Woo's. Realizing his mistake, he leaped back, dropping to the ground, begging for forgiveness. Jin-Woo sighed, understanding what had happened. Beru's protective instincts had momentarily overridden his command. For a moment, he glared at the kneeling shadow before shifting his gaze toward Heian. She had fallen to one knee, her breathing ragged. He still didn't understand. Why was she pushing herself so hard? Someone of her caliber didn't need to risk her life over a guild entrance exam. It wasn't worth it. Jin-Woo asked her why she was pushing herself so hard, hoping for an answer that would make sense. But Heian remained silent, avoiding his gaze. Her silence only deepened his confusion. Still confused, Jin-Woo asked Heian if she was interested in him. Heian's head snapped up, her expression betraying her shock. She looked completely caught off guard, as if the question had pulled her out of a daze. Jin-Woo, sensing her surprise, dismissed the thought with a shrug. But after a long pause, Heian quietly admitted the truth. Jin-Woo was right. She did have feelings for him. At the Federal Bureau of Hunters in the United States, Director David Brennan wasn't pleased with the recent news. His men had failed to recruit Sung Jin-Woo, a hunter the Bureau had been determined to bring into their ranks ever since witnessing his overwhelming strength during the Jeju Island raid. Assistant Director Connor, accompanied by Norma Selner standing beside him, apologized for their failure in completing the assignment. Brennan, eager to get to the bottom of the situation, wasted no time in demanding an explanation. He wasn't interested in apologies. He needed to know what had gone wrong. Connor detailed everything that had happened in Korea, describing their failed efforts to bring Jin-Woo under the Bureau's authority. He explained to the director that, based on Miss Selner's observations, Jin-Woo was supposed to be one of the monarchs. This revelation about Jin-Woo took Brennan by surprise. If true, it meant Jin-Woo's power was beyond what they had anticipated. Brennan immediately sought clarification, questioning whether this put him on the level of a national-level hunter. Miss Selner took a deep breath before explaining. All reawakened hunters drew their strength from a realm known as the other side. Their abilities were not their own, but channeled from this unseen force. She had always been able to perceive these connections, feeling the energy each hunter borrowed. Some hunters glowed brighter than the rest, appearing to her as streaks of blinding light. She had always referred to them as monarchs. But Jin-Woo's case was different. A chill ran through her as she recalled the experience. When she looked into Jin-Woo's eyes, she hadn't seen a connection to another source of power. Instead, she had seen darkness, a vast, overwhelming force, something endless and all-consuming. Unlike other hunters, Jin-Woo did not borrow his strength from anywhere. He was the source of his own power. No external forces granted him abilities, no limitations restricted his growth. He was the darkness itself. The weight of her words settled over the room like a suffocating pressure. Director Brennan, now understanding the gravity of the situation, thanked Miss Selner for her time. The implications were far beyond what he had expected. Connor watched as Director Brennan abruptly began walking, clearly having a plan in mind. When he asked where he was headed, Brennan instructed Connor to follow him to basement level 24. Both men walked to the elevator and stepped inside. As the doors closed and the descent began, Director Brennan finally broke the silence. If they couldn't use Miss Selner's abilities to bring Jin-Woo into the Bureau, they would need to find another way. He wasn't willing to give up so easily. He then reminded Connor of the first ever S-rank gate that had opened, a moment in history that no one could forget. Connor immediately understood what he was referring to. That catastrophic dungeon break had unleashed destruction on a scale never seen before, wiping out the entire West Coast. In response to the disaster, America had launched an unprecedented operation, offering massive rewards to gather the world's strongest hunters. Out of all those who had participated in the legendary raid, only 5 had survived. These 5 warriors, forged in the flames of battle, had been granted a title that carried the weight of an entire nation, national-level hunters. The monster responsible for the carnage was Kamish, the dragon known as the Undying Flame, a beast so powerful that it had single-handedly slaughtered hundreds of top-ranking hunters. Its name was etched into history as a symbol of absolute terror. As they reached basement level 24, Director Brennan questioned whether Connor could truly believe that nothing had been gained from such a tragedy. Connor hesitated for a moment before realizing what the director was implying. Brennan silently confirmed his suspicion as they stepped into the last room on the level. The reinforced door slid open, revealing a chamber unlike any other in the facility. Brennan stepped forward and carefully opened a safe embedded into the wall, unveiling the heavily secured artifact. It was a runestone extracted from Kamish's remains. Brennan explained that it had been 8 years since this rune had been recovered from the remains of the most fearsome monster in human history, and yet, in all that time, not a single hunter had been able to activate it. The power of the rune remained untouched, waiting in the shadows as if it had been left behind for someone else, for the one hunter who might finally unlock its secrets. As Brennan stared at Kamish's mortal remains, his mind raced with possibilities, wondering if this powerful artifact could be the key to their dilemma. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Jin-Woo stood in front of his bathroom mirror, lost in thought. Hae-in's words from earlier lingered in his mind. Jin-Woo wondered if he had really changed that much, considering himself fairly slim with average looks. Curious about how others might see him, he glanced into the living room where Jinna was lying on the couch. Grinning to himself, he decided to ask for her opinion. But Jinna, unimpressed, shot him down instantly. She questioned where he had gotten such baseless confidence and playfully teased him, insisting that, in her eyes, he still looked like a bum. Jin-Woo smirked before pinching her cheek, which quickly escalated into their usual playful banter. Their conversation soon shifted when Jin-Woo mentioned his plans to form a new guild. Jinna, now genuinely intrigued, asked if he had settled on a name. He suggested Solo Play Guild. Jinna, however, immediately rejected it. She pointed out the obvious contradiction. Jin-Woo wasn't a true solo player. His strength came from his ability to summon an army of shadow soldiers, so the name didn't make any sense. After thinking for a moment, Jinna offered an alternative, Ajin Guild. She explained the meaning behind it, where A meant I and Jin meant to go forward. Jin-Woo found it surprisingly clever, but what amused him the most was when Jinna revealed the real reason behind her choice. It was simply her name spelled backward. After mulling it over, Jin-Woo admitted it wasn't a bad name for his new guild. That night, Hae-in lay on her bed, feeling overwhelmed with embarrassment. The memory of her earlier conversation with Jin-Woo kept replaying in her mind. She had practically confessed her feelings. The realization made her cringe. She buried her face deeper into the blanket, wondering if Jin-Woo now thought of her as a strange woman. Every time she tried to brush it off, the moment resurfaced, making her mind go completely blank. She told herself it was natural to be interested in him. After all, he had saved her life. But deep down, she knew her feelings were far more complicated. For a brief moment, her thoughts drifted to Min Byung-gyu, the healer whose abilities had actually saved her. But just as she recalled him, a faint voice rang in her head. The voice was familiar, yet distant. She closed her eyes, desperately trying to grasp the fleeting memory. Something about it felt urgent, as if it had been buried in her subconscious, waiting for the right moment to surface. The voice echoed again. It spoke about Jin-Woo. Slowly, the memory began to take shape. The fog in her mind lifted, revealing Min Byung-gyu's shadow. But something was different. His usual calm demeanor was tinged with an unusual worry. His eyes, filled with concern, were locked onto her as he spoke. He had told her to warn Jin-Woo, to tell him to be careful of the power he possessed. A chill ran down Hae-in's spine. Her eyes snapped open as she sat up abruptly. At the Knights Guild, Yoon-tae arrived with urgent news for Guildmaster Park Jong-soo. A new gate had appeared the previous day, and securing a raid permit was proving difficult due to its high rank. While it wasn't an S-rank gate, it was dangerously close, enough to cause concern. The problem was clear. The Knights Guild simply didn't have the manpower to form a proper assault squad for such a high-level raid, but as one of the 5 major guilds in the country, failing to take it on would damage their reputation. Yoon-tae pointed out that if they passed on this gate, the Fame Guild would likely seize the opportunity. The idea of handing over a gate that had appeared so close to their own territory made Jong-soo fume with anger. While their A-rank hunters were strong, comparable to those in other major guilds, their biggest weakness remained unchanged. They had no S-rank hunters. That single fact alone prevented them from taking on the raid. As Jong-soo and Yoon-tae discussed their limited options, Jung Yerim, an A-rank healer, joined the conversation. She suggested forming an alliance with another guild, a logical choice under normal circumstances, but Jong-soo was skeptical. However, Yerim had a different idea. Instead of a guild alliance, she proposed bringing in a single hunter. Jong-soo initially dismissed the idea, questioning how a single hunter could make a difference in such a high-level raid, but before he could brush it off completely, something clicked. he suddenly realized who Jung Yerim was referring to. He knew that if they could bring Hunter Sung Jin-Woo into the raid, it wouldn't just increase their chances of safely clearing the gate, but also enhance their public image. With no time to waste, Jong-soo immediately decided to meet Jin-Woo in person to discuss this crucial matter. With the Knights Guild planning ahead for their crucial meeting, Jin-Woo arrived at his office the next day, having made a decision about his new guild's name. He proposed Ajin Guild. Jin-Ho was thrilled with the suggestion, feeling relieved that it wasn't something ridiculous like Solo Play Guild. With the name settled, Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho knew they only needed one last founding member to complete the team. Jin-Ho was taken by surprise when Jin-Woo dismissed Hunter Cha Hai-in as the potential candidate. Even though she seemed perfect for their guild, Jin-Woo explained that she wasn't the right fit. He was looking for someone with a hunter's license who had no interest in guild activities. As they were discussing, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Jin-Woo briefly wondered if it might be Hai-in again, but when he opened the door, he was met with three unfamiliar faces: Park Jong-soo, Yoon-tae, and Jung Yerim from the Knights Guild. Jong-soo introduced himself and immediately got to the point, showing Jin-Woo a video of a massive gate that had appeared in Busan. While it hadn't been officially classified as S-rank, its sheer size made it the largest gate ever recorded in the city. The situation was urgent. Jong-soo explained that the Knights Guild was struggling to obtain a raid permit because they had no S-rank hunters. That was the real reason for their visit. They had traveled all this way to ask Jin-Woo to join their assault team. If he agreed, it would fulfill the requirements needed to secure the permit they desperately wanted. To make the offer more appealing, Jong-soo offered Jin-Woo 20% of the profits, a generous share compared to the usual 10% most S-rank hunters received. Jin-Woo, however, countered with a 50-50 split. He made it clear that he would only join them if they treated him as a guild rather than just an individual hunter. Jong-soo, realizing that Jin-Woo was far from a pushover, agreed to the terms, but with one condition. Jin-Woo would have to defeat the dungeon boss. Without hesitation, Jin-Woo accepted. Jong-soo informed him that the raid needed to happen by the next day at the latest. Jin-Woo had no objections and assured them he wouldn't be late. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, Jin-Woo's phone vibrated. Stepping outside to take the call, he was greeted by a familiar voice, his mother. She had just bought a cell phone and called simply because she wanted to hear his voice. Jin-Woo, happy to hear from her, suggested they have dinner together that night. As it had been a while since they had spent time together, she agreed, and Jin-Woo looked forward to the evening. The next day, at Gwangali Beach in Busan, the elite hunters of the Knights Guild had gathered at the designated meeting point. Guildmaster Park Jong-soo stood among them, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as he anxiously awaited Jin-Woo's arrival. The scheduled start time was fast approaching. Only 5 minutes remained before the raid was set to begin. At that exact moment, Jin-Woo stepped out of his apartment building. He glanced up at the sky, sensing that it was time. Without wasting a second, he activated Shadow Exchange and disappeared. Back at Gwangali Beach, a large crowd had formed, their eyes locked on the enormous gate despite the gloomy clouds overhead. The sheer size of it was intimidating, even up close. Jin-Woo observed the scene carefully, noting the various raid teams assembled, and was quietly impressed by the number of A-rank hunters present. As he walked forward, he quickly found himself surrounded by the other hunters. They were eager to see him in action, especially after his legendary performance during the Jeju Island raid. The air buzzed with excitement and curiosity, but Jin-Woo found the sudden attention somewhat uncomfortable. Noticing his unease, Jung Yerim stepped in to deflect some of the attention. Her intervention gave Jin-Woo a much-needed moment of respite from the barrage of questions. Meanwhile, Jong-soo, thrilled to see Jin-Woo arrive, greeted him with enthusiasm. Jong-soo quickly addressed the group, officially announcing that as guildmaster, He would be leading the raid. The declaration was met with disappointment from several hunters, many of whom had hoped that Jin-Woo would take command instead. Despite their reactions, Jong-soo remained firm, explaining that Jin-Woo's role was to protect the backline and ensure the team's safety. With everything in place, Jong-soo signaled the start of the raid. The team moved forward, stepping toward the unknown dangers lurking beyond the gate, ready to face whatever awaited them inside. While things had settled at Gwangali Beach with Jin-Woo's arrival, a storm was silently brewing elsewhere, inside Jinna's high school. 3 male students, grumbling about being sent on an errand, wandered through the halls, following their art teacher's instructions. Their destination was the second art classroom, a room that had long been repurposed into a storage space. As they unlocked the door, a thick cloud of dust greeted them, filling the air with the stale scent of neglect. Casually discussing how many statues they needed to carry back, one of them suddenly froze. His eyes locked onto something unusual in the far corner of the room. The others followed his gaze. There, embedded in the wall, was a large, blue gate. Curiosity got the better of them. One of the students stepped forward, reaching out to inspect the gate, completely convinced that nothing would happen. At that moment, a deep crack split through the gate's surface. Before he could react, a hand shot out. It clamped down on the boy's head with an iron grip. He struggled desperately, but the hand's strength was absolute. Soon, a sickening crack echoed through the room. Blood splattered across the walls as his skull was crushed instantly. The remaining 2 students, paralyzed in horror, barely had time to scream before the gate shattered like glass. From the fractured portal, beasts began pouring into the world. The first creatures to emerge were 2 massive orcs. Their keen senses immediately detected prey nearby. The entire building was teeming with prey. One of them, eager for the thrill of the hunt, decided the time had come. He ordered his companion to summon their brothers. Once their forces were assembled, they would wipe out every human in the building before fortifying their position. As the leader orc walked through the corridor, he spotted 2 students in the distance and, without hesitation, charged at them with his axe raised high. The students, caught in the monster's bloodthirsty gaze, stood paralyzed in terror. In the blink of an eye, a normal school day had turned into a massacre. As the nightmare unfolded, one student managed to fumble for their phone. With shaking hands, they dialed the Hunters Association Emergency Center. An employee answered quickly. On the other end was a teenage girl, her voice trembling with fear. The receptionist tried to remain calm and professional, asking how she could assist. The girl, barely able to get her words out, whispered that she was at her school, hiding in a bathroom while terrifying beasts roamed outside. The receptionist's breath caught for a moment as she realized the gravity of the situation. As the girl struggled to form a sentence, overwhelmed by sheer terror, the receptionist urged her to stay calm and assured that hunters were already on their way. She gently asked the girl to describe the creatures. Through quiet sobs, the girl explained. They had human-like bodies, ugly faces, and green skin. A shiver ran down the receptionist's spine. She knew what they were dealing with, an orc outbreak. But before she could warn the girl, it was too late. A deep guttural growl rumbled through the speaker. Then came a single, blood-curdling scream, and the line went dead. The school had turned into a slaughterhouse. While some students had managed to flee, many weren't as lucky. Bloodied corpses littered the hallways, and those still alive were either running for their lives or cowering and hiding. Orcs, with blood dripping from their axes, stood over the lifeless bodies of their victims. Though some prey had managed to escape, their cruel, beastly eyes gleamed with satisfaction. There were still plenty more students trapped inside. On the top floor, a group of students huddled together, their bodies pressed against the walls as they listened to the horrors unfolding below. They had barricaded the classroom door with desks and chairs, but it was a feeble defense at best. The boys in the room clutched whatever they could find, chairs, mops, anything that could be used as a weapon, but their hands trembled and their eyes betrayed the truth. They knew none of it would make a difference. Suddenly, the door exploded from its frame as the leader orc burst into the classroom. Panic surged through the students as one boy, desperate to escape, sprinted toward the back door, only to be struck down instantly by an orc waiting in the shadows. With both exits blocked, the remaining students were trapped like cornered prey. Pressed against the wall, they could only watch in horror as the orcs closed in. Amid the chaos, Jinna huddled with her classmates in a corner, her heart pounding. Fear consumed her, but in that moment of terror, she clung to a single hope, her brother Jin-Woo. She called out to him in her mind, believing with all her heart that he would come for her. An orc scanned the group of terrified students and sensed something unusual, a surge of magic energy. It was coming from Jinna. Her presence stood out, and the orc's bloodthirsty gaze locked onto her as he became fixated on killing her. As the orc took a step toward her, Jinna's classmate stepped in the way. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she tried to block the orc's path, but it was futile. His eyes remained locked on Jinna as he raised his massive axe, ready to strike. Jinna watched in horror as the weapon rose above her head. She couldn't move. Her body was frozen in fear. Desperately, she squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. Just as the orc prepared to strike, something completely unexpected happened. All of a sudden, a high orc shadow soldier clad in black armor emerged, gripping the orc's wrist with an iron grip. The orc barely had time to react before the shadow soldier slammed its fist down on its head with overwhelming force. The impact was so brutal that the orc shot through the roof like a rocket. Soon, more high orc shadow soldiers materialized, their imposing figures rising from the darkness, their eyes locked onto any remaining threats as they moved in unison, forming an impenetrable wall around Jinna. The battle had shifted. She was no longer in danger. Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers had turned up at the school just in time, securing the area, while their master, on the other hand, had entered the dungeon alongside the Knights Guild raid party. Upon entering, they were met with a twin-headed ogre. The creature roared and swung its massive battle axe with all its might, aiming to crush anything in its path. Jong-soo, the tank of the group, charged forward, raising his shield just in time to block the powerful blow. The sheer force of the attack sent shockwaves through the ground, but he held firm. As Jong-soo held the line, he called out to Yuntai, who dashed in with lightning speed. With precision and agility, he leapt onto the ogre and slashed at both of its eyes. The beast roared in agony, thrashing wildly as Yuntai signaled the others to strike and inflict as much damage as possible. Seizing the opportunity, the Knights Guild hunters launched a coordinated counterattack. Their frontline fighters moved in sync, slashing deep into the ogre's thick hide, while the mages positioned behind them rained down scorching spells. The monstrous creature, now covered in wounds and burns, staggered backward before collapsing with a heavy thud. Jong-soo called for a brief regroup, acknowledging the difficulty of the raid. Encountering a twin-headed ogre at the entrance of a dungeon was rare, an ominous sign. Jin-Woo, surveying the scene, identified it as a gravekeeper. Jong-soo explained that such creatures often signified an army of undead lurking deeper within. Trying to keep the tension in check, Yuntai joked about not jinxing their situation. But before anyone could respond, they noticed something strange. The undead creatures within the dungeon weren't charging at them as expected. Instead, they were retreating, backing away as if something far more terrifying was chasing them. Jin-Woo's instincts flared. A sudden jolt of adrenaline shot through him as his heart pounded. He picked up urgent signals from the High Orc warriors he had stationed to protect Jinna. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, he turned to Jong-soo, informing him that he had an urgent matter to attend to. Jong-soo, startled by the sudden announcement, protested, concerned about the dangers they might face without his presence. But Jin-Woo remained unfazed. With a cold, steady gaze, he assured them that he would summon someone just as reliable to take his place. Then, without delay, he called forth the most powerful soldier in his shadow army, Beru. He instructed him to protect the humans while dealing with any other creatures however he pleased. The sheer presence of Beru, radiating overwhelming mana, sent a wave of fear through the hunters. They instinctively backed away, uneasy at the thought of finishing the raid alongside such a monstrous being. Jin-Woo calmly informed them that his summoned soldiers, including Beru, would assist them. He assured Jong-soo that 20 of his shadows were more than enough to clear the dungeon. Yerim, still in shock, questioned Jin-Woo's decision to leave after summoning such an overwhelming force. But one glance at Jin-Woo's icy expression silenced her. He made it clear, if they didn't want his help, he could withdraw his summons, but whatever happened next would be on the Knights Guild, not him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jong-soo quickly agreed. Jin-Woo checked the cooldown timer for his shadow exchange skill, frustration washing over him as he realized there was still over an hour left before he could use it. He couldn't afford to wait. Determined, Jin-Woo turned and sprinted toward the exit, but just as he prepared to cut through the undead blocking his path, something unexpected happened. The creatures, instead of attacking, dropped to their knees, bowing before him. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. Perhaps they were reacting to his necromancer abilities, but now wasn't the time to dwell on it. Dismissing his dagger back into his inventory, he burst out of the dungeon's exit and summoned his winged dragon, Kaisel. As he emerged, the crowd outside the gate stood frozen, watching in awe. Ignoring their curious stares, Jin-Woo climbed onto Kaisel's back, eyes burning with determination. With one command, he took off, soaring through the skies at breakneck speed, racing toward Jinnah. Back at the high school, the leader orc's head was sliced in half, its massive body collapsing to the floor. The towering shadow soldier slammed the remaining 2 orcs into the ground with a lethal blow. The students, frozen in fear, could only watch in horror, unable to comprehend what had just happened. In an instant, all 3 orcs attacking the classroom had been eliminated. Now, the shadow soldiers stood silently, guarding Jinnah. Confused and still in shock, Jinnah wondered if her brother had arrived, but as she looked around, the shadow soldiers refused to let her leave their side, pointing toward the lingering dangers still present in the building. Suddenly, a thunderous boom echoed through the halls. The dungeon gate cracked open, and a throne emerged. The final restriction had been lifted, unleashing the dungeon's master, Groktar, the orc warlord and chief of the Red Blade tribe. Sitting atop his throne, he exuded a terrifying presence, ready to bring mayhem upon the school. His moment of stillness was broken by a panicked subordinate rushing to his side, breathlessly reporting that a group of high orcs was assisting the humans. Groktar, unimpressed, asked how many there were. Upon learning there were only 3, he scoffed at the idea that his warriors couldn't handle them. Calling it pathetic, he lifted his massive axe and commanded his subordinate to lead the way. Reaching the classroom, Groktar wasted no time. With a powerful swing, his axe struck the towering shadow soldier, sending it flying. The other orcs erupted in cheers, chanting their leader's name. Despite their formidable strength, the shadow warriors were no match for the chief of the Red Blade tribe. Boasting about his countless victories, Groktar pointed to the tattoos covering his body, each a symbol of an enemy he had slain. He taunted the shadow soldiers, demanding a better fight. When they managed to block his strikes, he acknowledged their resilience but remained dominant. With a swift motion, he cut through them, expecting them to fall for good, but to his shock, the shadows regenerated instantly. Groktar frowned. Was this some kind of sorcery? No matter how many times he cut them down, they kept coming back. Frustration boiled inside him. As he pondered a way to eliminate the shadow soldiers, a voice rang in his head, urging him to kill the humans. The constant nagging gave him a headache. He then suddenly realized that if these shadows were controlled by magic, eliminating their caster would put an end to them. His gaze scanned the room, and then he saw Jinna. She stood behind the towering shadows, trembling. Groktar was certain she was the source. Without hesitation, he commanded his orcs to seize her, knowing the shadow warriors would be powerless while regenerating. One of his subordinates lunged toward Jinna. The shadow soldiers tried to intercept, but they were swarmed by the other orcs, who relentlessly slashed and stabbed, keeping them at bay. As the battle raged on, Groktar advanced on Jinna himself. He grabbed her by the mouth, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. A wicked grin spread across his face. He was about to squeeze the life out of her when a deafening roar echoed from the distance. Groktar's instinct screamed at him. Something was coming, fast. A surge of fear locked him in place as the thunderous sound of an approaching force grew louder. His grip loosened, and Jinna fell to the ground, gasping for air. Her friend rushed to her side, frantic with concern, but Groktar wasn't paying attention anymore. His focus was locked on the overwhelming presence closing in. Every second, it drew closer. Groktar's jaw clenched, his eyes widening as he grasped the sheer magnitude of the power rushing toward them. Panic surged through him as he bellowed to his orc warriors, ordering them to brace for impact. But before they could react, an earth-shattering explosion tore through the building. The classroom wall was obliterated, sending dust and debris billowing through the air. Jinna coughed, struggling to catch her breath, her vision blurred by the chaos around her. But amid the destruction, a familiar presence emerged beside her. Without a word, Jin-Woo gently patted her head, a silent reassurance that she was safe now. Groktar swallowed hard as he faced this new and incredibly powerful adversary. The overwhelming presence of Jin-Woo sent a chilling fear through him, a feeling he had never experienced before. Desperate to assert himself, Groktar straightened and introduced himself as the chief of the Red Blade tribe. But before he could finish, Jin-Woo's hand rose. Filled with rage, Jin-Woo pointed directly at Groktar, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade as he commanded him to shut up and wait. The orc chief froze, instantly silenced by the overwhelming presence before him. Jinna, tears welling in her eyes, threw her arms around her brother the moment her coughing subsided. Jin-Woo stroked her hair gently, asking if she was okay. Apologizing for being late, he glanced around, ensuring the students were safe. They nodded in relief, confirming they were unharmed. His gaze then landed on Jinna's face, where a distinct handprint on her cheek and neck made his blood boil. Without hesitation, he commanded Igris to stay by her side and protect her, then summoned additional shadow soldiers to escort the remaining students to safety. As the orcs tried to budge, seeing their prey slipping away, Jin-Woo glared at them with anger, demanding to know who had allowed them to move. Groktar, realizing the situation was far beyond his understanding, questioned Jin-Woo. Who was he, and how could he speak their language? But Jin-Woo's expression remained unreadable, his silence more terrifying than any answer he could give. Seeing no response, Groktar didn't waste another second. With a roar, he commanded his warriors to attack. The orcs surged forward, their weapons raised, but they never stood a chance. One swung a massive axe at Jin-Woo, but before it could land, Jin-Woo caught its fingers effortlessly, crushing them in his grip. The orc howled in pain before Jin-Woo flipped it upside down, slammed it into the ground, and crushed it beneath his foot. Two more orcs lunged, but Jin-Woo barely moved. With a flick of his wrist, he activated Commander's Touch, sending them colliding midair before clenching his fist, causing their bodies to burst apart. Despite the mounting losses, the orcs pressed forward, charging at him with reckless abandon. But Jin-Woo weaved through them with ease, dismantling them with nothing but his fingers. Wherever he touched, heads, shoulders, arms, torsos, the orcs exploded on impact, their remains painting the walls in carnage. In mere moments, dozens of orcs lay motionless, and Jin-Woo stood face to face with Groktar. The orc chief barely had time to react before Jin-Woo grabbed him by the jaw and slammed his head against the wall. Groktar gasped for air, his vision spinning as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Jin-Woo's gaze shifted, scanning the hallway. The sight of fallen students, lifeless bodies littered across the floor, sent his rage boiling over. His cold eyes locked onto Groktar once more as he pressed for an answer for the slaughter of humans. Groktar, trembling, stammered a response, claiming that a voice in his head had ordered him to slaughter all humans. Jin-Woo leaned in, his gaze piercing as he pressed for more. Had the voice commanded him to kill him as well? Groktar, now desperate, pleaded for forgiveness, swearing that he hadn't intended to challenge Jin-Woo. But Jin-Woo wasn't satisfied with his answer. The orc chief continued to beg, but Jin-Woo only grew colder. Perhaps, he thought, Groktar hadn't considered him human at all. Jin-Woo, in an eerily calm voice, told Groktar that he might forgive him, but the path to forgiveness would not be easy. And in the next instant, without another word, Jin-Woo summoned the demon monarch's dagger and brutally ended Groktar's life. Meanwhile, at Gwangali Beach, the dungeon raid pressed on. Jin-Woo's shadow ants swarmed the cavern walls, their battle cries echoing through the space. The sight sent shivers down the spines of the Knights Guild hunters, some of whom began voicing concerns, fearing these creatures might turn on them at any moment. Yuntae, uneasy, looked toward Jongsu for direction. Jongsu, deep in thought, realized they couldn't afford to back out now. If they retreated, they would have to face the reporters waiting outside, and calling off the raid out of fear wasn't an option. Just as he was steeling himself, Beru suddenly appeared in front of him. The unexpected appearance of the monstrous figure made Jongsu freeze, his confidence draining instantly. He struggled to find the right words, nervously attempting to address the creature with respect. Beru, however, simply stared at him in silence, heightening Jongsu's unease before vanishing just as quickly as he had appeared. The moment Jongsu began to process what had happened, Beru reappeared again, startling him further, and tossed something toward his feet. It was a severed head, the remains of a death knight, one of the strongest monsters they could encounter. Jongsu's breath hitched as he registered what he was looking at. The realization that Beru had effortlessly slain such a formidable foe in an instant left him in stunned silence. As Beru returned to commanding the shadow ants, Jongsu slumped to the ground, overwhelmed. His teammates rushed to check on him, asking if it was safe to continue following the shadow creatures. Gathering himself, Jongsu assured them he was fine and pointed at the decapitated head. He reminded them of the immense value of magic stones harvested from high-ranking monsters like this. Then, turning to his party, he asked if they still wanted to proceed. Before he could even finish his sentence, the raid party had already started moving. Yuntae chuckled, calling out to Jongsu to hurry up and keep pace. It had been quite a while since the raid began, and at last, the Knights Guild strike squad reached the entrance of the boss's lair. As they stepped inside, a chilling sight awaited them. An arch-lich, the dungeon's boss, flanked by a group of death knights. The moment they laid eyes on it, fear paralyzed them. None of them had expected to face a creature this powerful and infamous. Jongsu quickly assessed the situation. Arch-liches were notorious for wiping out entire guilds. He recalled the devastating incident involving China's Gold Dragon Guild, an elite force that was annihilated by an arch-lich, resulting in a near-catastrophic dungeon break that was only contained thanks to Liu Zhigang's intervention. His gut told him they were in trouble. Their squad, composed of only A-rank hunters, stood little chance against such a formidable opponent. Sensing the danger, Yuntae turned to Jongsu, anxiously asking what they should do. But before he could respond, the hunters noticed a horde of death knights marching toward them, weapons raised and ready to attack. Jongsu snapped into action, urgently ordering his team to block the doors. Yerim, reacting instantly, activated her holy shield, erecting a barrier that sealed the entrance in an instant. Jongsu knew they were running out of options, and without Jin-Woo, survival seemed impossible. Yurim, already struggling to maintain the barrier, turned to Jongsu with a look of concern. She warned him that it wouldn't hold for even 5 minutes. Then, at that critical moment, Beru stepped forward. Without hesitation, he strode past the hunters and stood directly in front of the Archlich. The boss, upon recognizing the Shadow Army's presence, was momentarily taken aback. It demanded to know why the Monarch's personal army was attacking them. Beru remained unfazed. Baring his mandibles and extending his claws, he coldly declared that they had been chosen by the king, while the Archlich had not. Indignant and in disbelief, the Archlich insisted that it would speak to the king itself. But before it could finish its sentence, Beru materialized mere inches from its face. The Archlich barely had a moment to react before Beru's claw pierced through its chest. A stunned silence filled the room as the Lich looked down, eyes wide in horror. Beru gripped its heart and yanked it free. The boss trembled, shaking its head in denial, desperately pleading for Beru not to break it. But the Ant King didn't care for its screams. Without hesitation, he crushed the life source in his fist. In an instant, the Archlich and its Death Knights disintegrated into the air, leaving nothing but a fading echo of their existence. Beru roared triumphantly as he struck down the final boss of the dungeon. The Knights Guild members stood in a mix of disbelief and excitement, watching as the raid concluded without a single casualty on their side. But things weren't as calm at Jinna's high school, where a large crowd had gathered, shaken by the tragic incident. The atmosphere was heavy with panic, grief, and the cries of parents mourning the loss of their children in the dungeon outbreak. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo had already left the scene, seated in a car alongside President Go Gunhee. As they rode together, President Go provided a report on the situation. Out of all the students, 213 had managed to escape safely, while 10 others were rescued from the building. The rest, tragically, hadn't made it in time. He then shared additional data with Jin-Woo, revealing an alarming trend. Gate appearances had been steadily increasing worldwide over the last 6 months. Alongside this surge, there was also a noticeable rise in the number of people awakening as hunters. It was as if the world was trying to maintain a balance between the threats emerging from the gates and those who could stop them. Jin-Woo then calmly asked about the reason behind the chairman's sudden visit. President Go explained that several countries had expressed interest in meeting him. Due to his S-rank status, many nations were eager to recruit him for their own purposes, with some even making highly lucrative offers. He assured Jin-Woo that the association had protected his personal information thus far, but ultimately, the decision to engage with these nations rested with him. As Jin-Woo listened closely, President Go voiced his concern. If he were to leave Korea, the country might struggle to adapt to the changes looming on the horizon. Soon, the chairman's car arrived at the hospital where Jinna had been taken. As Jin-Woo stepped out, President Go made one final plea, urging him to stay in the country. He reassured Jin-Woo that the association would do everything in its power to provide him with the resources he needed. The Korean Hunter Association had already lost 3 of its official S-rank hunters, 2 in the Jeju raid, and 1 to the United States. Losing another, especially someone of Jin-Woo's caliber, would be a devastating blow. President Go was determined to prevent that at all costs. After a brief moment of thought, Jin-Woo made an unexpected request. He asked for permission to enter high-ranking gates alone, bypassing the minimum capacity requirement. President Go was taken aback. The law requiring a set number of hunters in raids was designed to protect them from unnecessary risks. However, as he considered Jin-Woo's words, it became clear that this might have been the very reason he had formed his own guild. Jin-Woo confirmed this and asked if his request was too much. While the idea of a single-man raid team was unheard of, President Go understood that Jin-Woo wasn't just any hunter. Though hesitant, he agreed that it wasn't impossible and promised to do everything in his power to make it happen. After dropping Jin-Woo at the hospital, President Go headed straight to the National Assembly to discuss Jin-Woo's urgent matter. As he presented his request to recognize summoned minions as official members of strike squads, one of the assembly members immediately rejected the idea, calling it absurd. The member argued that the Hunters Association was meant to serve all hunters equally and accused President Go of bending regulations solely for hunter Sung Jin-Woo. Remaining calm, President Go acknowledged that this was indeed preferential treatment. He then posed a simple yet powerful question to the assembly. If they had to choose between sending an assault squad of regular hunters or letting Jin-Woo clear a dungeon alone, which would they pick? The room fell silent as the weight of the question sank in. President Go then reminded them that guilds from around the world were eager to recruit Jin-Woo. If Korea refused to compromise, there was a real risk he might leave for another country. He urged them not to repeat past mistakes, referencing how hunter Hwang Dong-soo had defected to the United States. He then nudged the assembly, reminding them that if another S-rank gate appeared in Korea, they would need someone capable of protecting them. Meanwhile, unaware of all the buzz surrounding her, Yoo Soo-yeon was fully engrossed in her work in the entertainment industry. After wrapping up a shoot, she noticed her phone buzzing with a call from her brother, Jin-ho. He invited her to join Ajin Guild, assuring her she wouldn't have to do any actual work. He explained that they needed one more founding member to finalize the guild's registration. Skeptical, Soo-yeon teased Jin-ho, asking if he had fallen for some kind of scam. Jin-ho, amused, told her she'd be shocked when she found out who this so-called shady guy was. After their call, Soo-yeon made her way to Ajin Guild's office. Upon arriving, Jin-ho introduced her to Jin-Woo, explaining that she was his cousin and a certified A-rank hunter. The realization hit Soo-yeon. She was standing before the famous Sung Jin-Woo. Jin-ho, ever playful, reminded her that she was the real celebrity in the family. But Soo-yeon remained more excited to meet Jin-Woo than to bask in her own fame. Observing their interaction, Jin-Woo considered the family dynamics. Jin-ho was a D-rank hunter, while Soo-yeon was A-rank. He pondered whether genetics played a role in the awakening process, recalling cases of siblings gaining abilities and reflecting on his own father, who had been a hunter. Turning his attention back to Soo-yeon, Jin-Woo asked if Jin-ho had explained everything to her. She confirmed that she understood they needed a founding member. Jin-Woo then warned her that joining their guild would likely cause a media frenzy and asked if she was prepared for that. Unbothered, Soo-yeon brushed it off, saying that anything was better than being involved with Jin-sung. Curious, Jin-Woo asked who she was referring to, and Jin-ho quietly explained that Jin-sung was his older brother, infamous for his bad personality. As Jin-Woo processed the conversation, Soo-yeon hesitated for a moment before stepping closer to him. With a small smile, she asked if he would mind taking a selfie with her. Jin-Woo obliged, and Soo-yeon quickly posted it on social media. The post went viral almost instantly, sparking conversations everywhere. When Hae-in saw the photo, an uneasy feeling washed over her. Her heart ached, her body trembled, and for the first time, she felt a deep sense of insecurity she couldn't ignore. After the National Assembly approved Jin-Woo's request to recognize his summoned minions as official members of strike squads, he arrived with Jin-ho at the site of an A-rank gate that had recently appeared. It was their guild's first ever raid after receiving authorization, and Jin-ho stood in awe, staring at the massive, towering structure before him. Jin-Woo, always focused, led the way as they prepared for their mission. However, they weren't alone. The chief inspector of the Hunters Association's surveillance team, Woo Jin-chul, was also present, assessing Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers. Observing them closely, he noted that each of them was at least B rank, with some likely reaching A rank. Jin-Woo and his soldiers easily passed the safety checks required for the A-rank gate, proving they were more than capable. Jinchul quickly realized that those questioning whether Jin-Woo received special treatment simply didn't understand the full extent of his power. With preparations complete, Jinchul signaled that they were ready to proceed. However, before stepping into the gate, he unexpectedly removed his coat. Both Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho were taken aback as Jinchul revealed a full suit of armor underneath his formal attire. He then explained that Chairman Go had ordered him to personally observe the raid to ensure everything was truly safe. He asked if he could accompany them as a representative of the inspection team, just for the day. Jin-Woo questioned whether Chief Jinchul was truly prepared for what lay ahead. At that moment, Jinchul didn't fully grasp what Jin-Woo meant, but he soon realized it after witnessing the gruesome scene unfolding before him in the dungeon. An A-rank monster, a Naga, was being ruthlessly stabbed and slashed by Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers. On the other side of the battlefield, the shadow ants devoured their prey alive, creating a disturbing sight. Iron and Tank tore through the monsters with sheer brute force, while the formidable Beru decapitated a Naga with a single effortless slice. Sweat dripped down Jinchul's forehead as he observed the massacre. Even elite veteran hunters with exceptional combat and magic skills would struggle against such formidable opponents. Yet, these monsters stood no chance against Jin-Woo's shadow army. Among them, one figure stood out the most. Igris, wielding the demon monarch's sword, moved with blinding speed, lightning striking from his blade with every swing. He annihilated the Nagas in an instant, his overwhelming presence making Jinchul wonder if he surpassed even A-rank hunters. For a brief moment, Jinchul questioned whether he himself would stand a chance in a one-on-one fight against Igris. While his army handled the monsters, Jin-Woo commanded another squad to mine the mana crystals, ensuring every resource was efficiently utilized. Jinchul, still in shock, now fully understood why Chairman Go had sent him to observe Jin-Woo firsthand. This wasn't just a one-man assault squad. Jin-Woo was capable of clearing an A-rank dungeon, retrieving valuable corpses, and mining mana crystals entirely on his own. Just then, the boss of the dungeon appeared, a massive Naga wielding dual tridents. Its presence alone sent a wave of unease through Jinchul. Jin-Woo, however, remained calm. He instructed his mining team to keep working while commanding the rest of his soldiers to return to him. Jinchul was puzzled. Why send away the shadow soldiers when they could easily handle the boss? Jin-Woo simply smirked, taking out his demon monarch's dagger. He explained that relying too much on his shadows could dull his own abilities. Then, without hesitation, he lunged forward. The Naga boss roared, swinging its tridents with immense force, but Jin-Woo had already moved. In a flash, he closed the distance, dodging effortlessly. Before the creature could react, Jin-Woo sliced through its head in one swift, precise strike. Jinchul watched in awe as the beast's lifeless body crumpled to the ground with a heavy thud. A notification appeared before Jin-Woo. He had reached level 101. Even more surprising, all his job-exclusive skills had leveled up. His shadow exchange cooldown had decreased by an hour. Jin-Woo's eyes widened with delight as he realized that if it continued to decrease with each level he gained, he would eventually be able to move freely anywhere without worrying about his mother and sister's safety. Meanwhile, Jinchul stood frozen, still trying to process what he had just witnessed. Jin-Woo had sliced through the thick Naga scales with nothing but 2 daggers, something that should have been impossible. Just then, something else caught Jinchul's attention. Jin-Woo raised his hand over the fallen Naga boss and murmured a single word, "Arise." The system notified him that the shadow enhancement was successful. His new soldier started at level 13. Despite being smaller, it radiated an enormous amount of mana. Jin-Woo concluded that, like Tusk, it might be able to increase its size through magic. The system then prompted Jin-Woo to choose a name for his new summon. After a brief moment of thought, he decided on Jima. Jinho, who had been watching closely in awe, was amazed at Jin-Woo's ability to turn such a powerful monster into one of his own. Despite his excitement, he reminded Jin-Woo that they should head out. However, Jin-Woo's gaze remained locked on the massive carcass before him, contemplating what to do with it. Outside the gate, reporters stood in wait, ready to capture anything noteworthy. Then, from within the gate, an enormous figure emerged, carrying the Naga boss's carcass on its shoulders. It was Tusk. Gasps filled the air. Cameras flashed wildly. Panic briefly set in among the reporters, but once they realized it was Jin-Woo's summon, fear turned into excitement. Tusk, feeling self-conscious under the spotlight, responded with a big, awkward smile. Jinho and Jin-Woo stood silently, realizing that their first raid had attracted far more attention than they had expected. Meanwhile, Chief Wu Jinchul, standing beside them, remained shaken. The scenes he had witnessed inside the dungeon refused to leave his mind. With the same exhausted and shaken expression, Chief Wu Jinchul arrived at the Hunter Association, recounting the entire ordeal to President Go Gunhee. Jinchul, his eyes dark with unease and sweat trickling down his brow, admitted that what he had witnessed wasn't a typical raid, it was a massacre. As he detailed every moment inside the dungeon, President Go let out a deep sigh. Understanding the toll this experience had taken on him, the chairman calmly instructed Jinchul to take some rest. Left alone in his office, President Go stood by the window, lost in deep thought. Hunter Sung Jin-Woo had not only cleared an A-rank dungeon, but had also retrieved monster corpses and mined mana crystals, completely on his own. He recognized Jin-Woo as a one-man guild, an army unto himself. A slow smile spread across President Go's face. His earlier instincts had been correct. Korea, and the world, was on the brink of a massive shift in power. And the first tremor of that shift was already underway. In Tokyo, the bustling city suddenly came to a standstill. Pedestrians froze. Conversations stopped. All eyes turned to the sky, where an enormous shadow loomed overhead. A gigantic portal, the size of a skyscraper, had opened in the heart of Shinjuku. An S-rank gate had just appeared. That wraps up the Ajin Guild arc. Stay tuned for part 2. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part when it drops. I'll see you in the next one as we dive into a brand new chapter. Until then, check out these 5 anime like Solo Leveling with overpowered main characters.